Sometimes your presence alone shifts the atmosphere. You enter a room, and without a word, something changes. It's not always pleasant for others. It can feel disruptive, overwhelming, even threatening. Not because you intend to disturb anyone, but because the energy you carry is not average. Carl Jung once said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. And when your internal fire burns too brightly, it doesn't just transform. It incinerates illusions, awakens suppressed truths, and unconsciously exposes the shadow in others. That kind of energy is not something everyone can handle. First sign, you unintentionally trigger people's insecurities without saying a word. This happens when your self-awareness acts as a silent mirror. You don't have to point out anything. Your very being reflects back what others try to hide. Those who build their identity around facades or societal masks feel unsettled around you. They might accuse you of being too intense or too much, but what they're really saying is, I don't know how to face what I see in myself when I'm with you. Jung believed that what we repress within ourselves doesn't disappear. It simply moves into the unconscious, forming the shadow. When your energy pulls these repressed elements to the surface, it creates discomfort. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something real. Your presence exposes the contrast between the authentic and the artificial, and not everyone is ready to see that reflection. Second sign, you are often misunderstood, even when your intentions are pure. Powerful energy doesn't always speak the language of logic or social norms. It communicates through resonance, through depth, through presence. But most people are conditioned to only hear the surface-level noise, the polite phrases, the socially acceptable scripts. When you speak with soul, they may misread your silence as arrogance, your intensity as aggression, or your detachment as coldness. What they're really reacting to is your refusal to perform. Jung emphasized the individuation process, becoming whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious self. This path demands authenticity over conformity, depth over pleasantries. As you walk this path, your very existence becomes a challenge to superficiality. And those who aren't ready for depth will label you as different, difficult, or even dangerous, simply because you don't play the game they were taught to master. Third sign, you attract people who want to feed off your energy, but also fear it. There is a paradox that powerful souls often face. You draw people in like a magnet, yet their admiration is often laced with confusion or envy. Some will want to be close to you just to bask in your inner fire, but they won't know how to handle the heat. They may try to contain you, dilute you, or reshape you into something more palatable. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But the tragedy is that many are too afraid to pay that price themselves. Instead, they seek it through others, like you. They project their unlived potential onto you, trying to possess it, imitate it, or even sabotage it. But true power cannot be borrowed or stolen. It must be forged within. Your presence reminds them of this, and that reminder can be both magnetic and unbearable. There is a certain kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being without people. It comes from being too much for them. When your energy burns brighter than the norm, you don't just walk a different path. You often walk it alone. Not because you desire solitude, but because most cannot meet you at the depth where you truly live. Carl Jung understood this isolation well. He wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And when what's important to you is inner truth, transformation, and authenticity, the average person may find your presence too heavy, too piercing, too alive. Fourth sign, you feel emotionally isolated even in crowds. You might be surrounded by laughter, conversation, and small talk, and still feel like you're somewhere else entirely. It's not that you can't socialize, you can. You even know how to adapt if you have to, but it's exhausting. Shallow interactions drain you. Meaningless chatter feels like sandpaper on your soul. You crave soul-level conversations, the kind that unravel hidden truths, that explore paradoxes, that invite silence without awkwardness. But these are rare. And so you drift through social spaces like a ghost, present but unseen. Jung believed that to become whole, we must descend into the depths of our psyche. But the deeper you go, the harder it becomes to connect with those still standing at the surface. Fifth sign, you're often seen as too intense or too serious. This label is a defense mechanism people use when they don't know how to receive depth. Intensity is not about moodiness or drama, it's about depth of perception. You notice what others miss, you feel what others suppress, you hear what isn't being said, and that kind of perception can be confronting. The average person is conditioned to avoid intensity, to stay light, entertained, distracted. When you come with questions that pierce illusions, when you express truths that disrupt comfort, you're not welcomed with open arms. You're labeled, boxed, dismissed, not because you're wrong, but because you're real. Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And when you live from your soul, you become the thing they run from. Sixth sign, you experience frequent energetic burnout, not from doing too much, but from feeling too much. Powerful energy is a double-edged sword. You don't just feel your own emotions. You absorb the unspoken currents in a room, the undercurrents of someone's tone, the wounds they don't speak of. You carry the weight of perception, and it's heavy. You can't unsee patterns. You can't pretend not to notice dishonesty or inauthenticity. Your system is constantly filtering, decoding, sensing. This is a form of spiritual hyper-awareness, and it comes with a cost. Without sacred boundaries and regular solitude, you begin to dim. You feel drained, raw, even physically ill. Jung emphasized the importance of inner balance, the integration of opposites, and when you're energetically powerful, that balance requires active maintenance. You are a conduit, and conduits must be cleared, protected, and recharged often. Not everyone understands this, but you must. As your journey continues, you may question whether your intensity is a burden or a gift. But the truth is, it's both. It alienates, yes, but it also liberates. It disturbs the shallow, but it attracts the true. And as Jung taught, the path of individuation is not about belonging, it's about becoming. Becoming who you are beneath the roles, beneath the masks, beneath the fear of being too much. When your energy carries the weight of authenticity, truth, and unconscious resonance, it doesn't just challenge, it transforms. Not because you set out to change people, but because your existence alone destabilizes the fragile structures they've built to avoid transformation. Jung understood this dynamic intimately. He believed that encounters with authentic individuals, those who live from the self, not the persona, can provoke intense psychic reactions in others. Because in a world built on appearances, truth feels like violence. Seventh sign. People project onto you both their light and their darkness. You become a screen for unresolved inner battles. One person may see you as a threat, another as a savior, and yet another as a mirror for their own shame. Rarely do they see you clearly, because you're not just you in their eyes. You are their father wound, their unmet potential, their lost innocence, their shadow. Jung called this projection, the unconscious act of assigning our own inner content to others. And when you carry potent, integrated energy, You magnetize these projections like a storm draws lightning. It's not fair. It's not easy, but it is real. You must learn to discern what belongs to you and what does not, or you will drown in other people's psychological debris. 8th sign, your honesty disrupts, not because it's cruel, but because it's unfiltered. You don't speak in riddles or hide behind niceties. You speak from the core, with clarity, with courage, with resonance. And while that may feel liberating to those who value truth, to the average person it's often too much. Most people don't want honesty. They want validation. They want to be seen, yes, but not fully. Because to be fully seen is to be fully exposed. Your words cut through illusion, and that makes you dangerous in the eyes of the inauthentic. Jung wrote that truth has to break through the resistance of the unconscious, and when it does, it can cause pain before it brings healing. You don't mean to hurt, but when you speak from truth, it stings those who live in denial. That's not your cruelty, it's your clarity. 9th sign, you notice what others are not ready to see. In themselves, in others, in the world. This is not simply intuition, it's pattern recognition on a spiritual level. You see the undercurrents in conversations, the fractures behind smiles, the unspoken conflicts hiding in silence. You pick up on dissonance, not just in words, but in energy. You may try to ignore it, to play normal, but the awareness doesn't turn off. You were not built for surface life. You were built for depth. And that depth can be overwhelming, both for you and for those around you. Jung taught that the unconscious constantly communicates with the conscious mind, not through logic, but through symbols, slips, and resonance. You are tuned to that frequency, which means you see more, and that often means feeling alone in a world that prefers blindness over sight. There's a cost to carrying this kind of energy. You're not just navigating relationships, you're navigating psychological minefields. But there's also a strange beauty in it, the power to illuminate, to awaken, to catalyze. Yes, your energy may disturb others, but it also calls them silently, deeply, to evolve. There comes a point in the journey where you stop asking, why do I feel so different? And start asking, what is this energy trying to become through me? When your presence alone unsettles people, when your thoughts seem to echo from a deeper well, you are no longer just a person in the world. You've become a vessel for something beyond it. Carl Jung spoke of the self as the totality of our being, not just our conscious ego, but the vast, mysterious forces that live within and beyond us. When your energy is powerful, it's not about you in the conventional sense. It's about what flows through you and what that flow awakens in others. 10th sign. You often feel like you're living on the edge of two worlds, the seen and the unseen. Reality for you isn't confined to what can be measured or explained. You sense the invisible architecture behind events. You feel the presence of meaning even in the mundane. This can be isolating. Not everyone sees the web of synchronicities, the symbols hidden in plain sight, the emotional truths behind logical arguments. You might even doubt yourself, question your sensitivity. But Jung reminded us that the unconscious speaks in symbols and that it constantly tries to communicate with the conscious mind. You are simply one of the rare few who are listening. And in a world that prefers distraction over depth, that awareness becomes a kind of exile, but also a gift. You are a bridge between the ordinary and the sacred. 11th sign, you don't just change rooms, you change people. Without intending to, your presence activates transformation in others, sometimes gently, sometimes violently. Old wounds begin to surface. Suppressed truths demand to be spoken. People either grow or flee. There is rarely neutrality around you. This isn't about charisma or charm. It's about vibration. You vibrate at a level that challenges stagnation. You represent a path not taken, a version of themselves they're afraid to meet. Jung understood that true transformation is rarely peaceful. The shadow resists integration. The ego resists death. And so, when you embody truth, you become a living invitation and a threat to change. You must accept that not everyone will thank you for this. Some will resent you, others will try to control or diminish you, but a few, the rare few, will awaken. 12th sign. You've tried to dim yourself in the past, and it almost destroyed you. At some point, you probably attempted to normalize yourself, to be less intense, less aware, less you. Maybe it was for love, for acceptance, for safety. But every time you dimmed your energy to fit in, something inside you began to die. Jung taught that neurosis is often the result of a life not lived, an unlived truth gnawing at the soul. And that's exactly what happens when you suppress your essence. The pain doesn't come from being too much. It comes from pretending you're not. Eventually you realized fitting in is not worth fragmentation. You were not made to be digestible. You were made to be whole. And that wholeness requires embracing the full spectrum of who you are, your intensity, your insight, your silence, your fire. This is the path of the initiated, the soul who carries more than just personality, who carries presence. It is not always easy, it is not always welcome, but it is necessary. The world does not need more polite performers. It needs more souls who remember, who feel deeply, who disturb illusions, who awaken the sleeping. And yes, who carry energy that is simply too powerful for the average person, not out of superiority, but out of alignment with the self. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And if your energy feels like too much, perhaps it's not because it's too big, but because the world has grown too small.